There was a moment on that highway when I thought I'd made a mistake getting back in the truck, and I told myself I was being paranoid. I keep coming back to that moment. I keep asking myself why I didn't listen. It was October, and I'd been traveling for 3 days. Not a vacation, nothing romantic about it. I had left a situation in Sacramento that I needed distance from. A bad relationship, an apartment I couldn't afford alone. A version of my life I was trying to outpace. I had a backpack, about $60, and a plan that didn't extend much further than getting to my cousin's place in Oregon. I wasn't hitchhiking exactly. I was just moving, however I could, accepting rides when they came and trying not to think too hard about the gap between where I was and where I was going. The first ride had been fine. Older woman in a station wagon going as far as Red Bluff. She had talked the whole time about her grandchildren and offered me a peanut butter sandwich from a paper bag on the back seat. That kind of ride. The second was a younger guy in a pickup who barely said a word, dropped me off at a rest stop north of Reading without ceremony, and that was that. The rest stop is where I met the man with the truck. He was parked at the far end of the lot. One of those big commercial rigs. Dark cab, no company markings. I could make out from a distance. He was leaning against the driver's side door, drinking a gas station coffee, and he looked the way a lot of long haul drivers look, tired in a permanent kind of way, like the road had been slowly pressing the expression out of his face for years. He was tall, broad, the kind of man who takes up space without trying. He asked where I was headed. I said north, Oregon eventually. He said he was running coastal freight, cutting west to Eureka first, then working his way up the 101 through Humboldt. He said if I wasn't in a rush and didn't mind the scenic route, I was welcome to ride along as far as the coast, and from there I could catch something straight north without any trouble. He made it sound reasonable. He made it sound like a favor. I said, yes. That's what I did. I said yes. Looking back, there were things I noticed that I didn't allow myself to attach meaning to. The cab of that truck was extraordinarily clean. Not just tidy, clean in a deliberate way, like something wiped down. No coffee rings, no wrappers, no receipts or pens or the usual debris of a man who spends life in a small space. Long haul drivers are either the most cluttered people in the world or deeply organized. I had seen both, but something about the particle sterility of the cab felt less like discipline and more like maintenance, like it had recently been made the way. He didn't ask much about me. That was the other thing. Most people who give you a ride want to talk, they want to exchange. They pick up you because they are bored or lonely or they like the feeling of doing something decent. This man made a little conversation, just enough, and then went quiet in a way that didn't feel uncomfortable. At first, just steady. His eyes stayed on the road. His hands barely moved on the wheel. He drove like a man who had made this trip many times and no longer had any feelings about it. I told him my name. He gave me one back. Something short, common, the kind of name that doesn't catch on anything when you try to remember it later. We drove for about 2 hours before anything shifted. Somewhere past Reading, the light had started going. That grey October dark that comes earlier than you expect. And the highway was thinning out. Fewer cars, longer stretches between exits. The kind of road that starts to feel less like infrastructure and more like emptiness. Arranged in a line, when he turned west onto Route 299, the road immediately changed character. 2 lanes, dense tree cover on both shoulders, no shoulder lighting. The kind of road that feels like it disappears behind you as fast as you moved through it. He asked if I was hungry. I said I could eat. He said he knew a place. He stopped sometime just off the main road. A dinner that wouldn't win any wars, but it was hot food, and they kept late hours. He said it matter of factly, the same way he said everything. I said that sounded fine. The turn he took was unmarked, a county road, badly lit, dropping away from 299 into something darker. Nothing visible from the junction but fields, a distant water tower, tree line pressing in close on both sides. I asked if I'd missed a sign. He said the place was just a few minutes up. That was the moment. That was it. The one I keep returning to because I noticed that the turn wasn't marked, that we were now a county road in the dark with no lights ahead and the main road already gone behind us. I noticed all of that and then I looked at his hands on the wheel and his eyes fixed straight ahead and his jaw set the same way it had been set the entire drive. And I thought, he's a long haul driver. He runs this coastal route all the time. He knows turnoffs that aren't on any map I had ever looked at. That's how this world works for people like him. So I stayed quiet. The dinner existed. Small building, gravel lot, a lighting buzzing over the door, 2 other vehicles parked outside. He didn't do anything alarming in the parking lot. He ordered a meal, ate it, said nothing as usual. If there was a test being run, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be passing. What I remember is how he watched the door the whole time we were in that dinner. Every time it opened, his eyes went there. Not casually, not the way you glance at movement. He tracked it. Whoever walked in, he looked at them the way you look at something you are deciding about. Not hostile, not fearful, evaluating. Each person got about 2 seconds of that assessment before his gaze returned to the table. And then he had take another bite and wait. I ate fast. I don't know if that was instinct or just hunger. Back in the truck, the quiet felt different. I want to be precise about this because I think it matters. Before the dinner, the silence was flat. After, it had a weight to it, like something was being considered that wasn't being said. He drove, and I sat, and I started doing the math I should have been doing 3 hours earlier. How far we were from the junction, how far from the last town, how many cars I had seen in the last 20 minutes. None. I said I thought I'd get out at the next town, that I had figured out another way to make the connection north, and didn't want him going out of his way. He didn't respond immediately. That gap, maybe 3 or 4 seconds, is its own kind of answer. Then he said, sure. No pushback, no question. Just that single word. And his hands stayed exactly where they were, on the wheel. The next junction was several minutes down the road. He pulled off at a gas station. That was it. Visible from the road, another car at the pump. I got my bag and thanked him, and I got out. He didn't pull away immediately. I walked toward the station entrance and I could hear the truck still idling behind me, and I did not look back. I have thought about I have thought about that choice many times since. Whether looking back would have changed something or whether not looking was the right instinct. I heard him pull out. Eventually, the engine faded west toward the coast. I stood outside that gas station for a long time. 3 weeks later, I was at my cousin's place, sleeping on her couch, beginning to think the ride had been nothing more than a bad feeling, and a man who has and a man whose company made my skin prickle for reasons I couldn't prove. The world is full of those. I had talked myself most of the way to believing it. I was looking something else up entirely when the article appeared in a sidebar. Local news, Humboldt County, a cold case unit, announcing the identification of a woman whose partial remains had been recovered from a tidal waterway near Dhabhe, a Jain tow, for almost 3 decades, finally identified through genetic genealogy work done in partnership with a private laboratory. She had been 25 when she died. In the same October, I had been on that highway, and the investigation had eventually connected her death to a man, a trucker, someone who had confessed to more than one killing after turning himself in years later. Someone who worked a coastal freight route. I read the article twice. Then I went into my cousin's bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub for a while. I don't know if it was the same truck. I want to say that clearly. I don't know if the man who gave me a ride that night was the man in that article, or if I am assembling a shape from pieces that don't actually fit because my mind needs a geometry to resolve. What I know is that a woman roughly my age was on or near that same stretch of highway around that same time, and she ended up in that slough. And someone drove her there, and she spent 25 years without her name. If you have ever rationalized a red flag in the moment, talked yourself out of something your body already knew, I had want to understand what it would have taken for you to listen, because I have been turning that question over for a long time. I got back on highway about 4 months. After that, I had to. I needed work, needed to move, needed to stop letting one dark county road on every quiet moment in my head. The first time a truck slowed beside me, I kept walking. I kept walking. The time after that, too. I don't know when that changes. Maybe it doesn't. She had a name the whole time. That's what stays with me. She had a name and a family. And 25 years went by before any of that could be returned to her. And somewhere inside that same stretch of years, I was going about my life, occasionally remembering pieces of that October night and then setting them back down. And the distance between where I ended up and where she did comes down to a gas station with its lights on, and a decision I made for reasons I still can't trace to anything deliberate. I don't try to reconstruct his face anymore. What I think about instead is the door of that dinner and the way his eyes moved to it. and the flat patience in that assessment. Not the look of a nervous man, not the look of someone guilty and afraid. Just a man running a quiet calculation over and over, meal after meal, mile after mile, in a cab that smelled like nothing at all. The road doesn't frighten me the same way it used to, but I listen differently now. I listen to the silence that comes after something is considered, but not spoken. I listen to the shape of a gap between a question and its answer. I should have been listening to it a long time ago. But you have to survive something before you understand what it was teaching you. She deserved to survive it too. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Deep Fears for more new stories coming soon.